الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا مولانا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا Muhammad. This is part 2 of our lesson in dedication to Imam al-Hussein على نبينا وآل بيت النبوة أفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم. Sometimes the lessons we failed to learn from real history can be imparted through fiction, a place where we feel just safe enough to face ourselves, to use imagination as a tool for truth, not to escape reality, but to craft a confrontation with it, a muwajaha. Stories like Wicked give us a space to revisit our mistakes, to reimagine what might have been if the crowd had stood with the one they condemned. The phoenix motif, the rebirth of the fallen, is not just about individual survival. It is about the possibility of collective redemption, a society that finally recognizes the evil it projected onto its most loyal members. But as Muslims, we do not need fictional endings to soothe us. We are not waiting for the world to get it right before we believe justice is real. We believe in a final reckoning, a day when every soul will stand before the truth. Heaven and hell are not metaphors. They are certainties. God does not forget. His scales are uncorrupted. His knowledge is perfect, and his judgment cannot be deceived by costume or spectacle. This is why fiction, when filtered through a faith lens, should not offer us fantasy hope, but remind us that real hope resides only in the eternal. It reminds us what it means to be on the side of truth, even when the ending doesn't look like a victory. And perhaps the reason today's influencers of the Ummah now stare defeat in the face is because they chose the illusion of algorithmic triumph yesterday, only to be unmasked in their cowardly self-defeat just weeks before it gave way to ummatic collapse. What was the Hamlet verdict, after all, but a mirror? Yes, indeed, men are known by their stances. Who needs to save face now? Certainly not Elphaba. Maybe the issue isn't doing more. Maybe the issue is doing differently. It is unfortunate that stories like Wicked must teach us what we did not learn from history. But even still, perhaps her happy ending can help us find ours. Because the real plot resolution is not just when the hero returns, but when society awakens and realizes they never should have banished her in the first place. Fiction can be the theater of repentance, a space to imagine what the world could have been if only we had chosen better. It can be a space to reawaken moral clarity and confront failure. Because through high himma, fiction can be something far greater than escape. It can become a sacred rehearsal for becoming the change our Prophet wants to see in the world. Sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam. As the wizard complex pays tribute to truth in tongue alone, Elphaba's embodied ethics became a genuine threat, exposing the theater of power. And so, through the grit of her goodness, her wand of wit became the very instrument by which hypocrisy was unmasked. Pharaoh's court once sent forth its serpents to intimidate Moses, alayhi salam, but with a single strike, his staff devoured their illusions whole. In every age, the false must eventually face the force of truth. This is the legacy of Ashura. At Karbala, the most despicable excuse for a human being executed the grandson of the master of mankind, sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam. The most noble of faces was drenched in blood, while the vilest of faces were cloaked in prestige. This reality reversal echoes the signs of the Dajjal, the false Messiah, who will invert all meanings. In his age, the ugly will be praised, the truth vilified. Sadly, in our times, it is no longer a virtual reality. Elphaba's green face evoked disgust in the mirror of the ego, because to those who covet the world, her beauty was unbearable. Not because she was hideous, but because they are. Yet in Fiyero, her face awakened love, for he saw with the eye of the heart. And so, to dare dream that love might actually save the day is perhaps the greatest feat of divine hope. The Hamlet verdict was a highly sophisticated spiritual technology that few can yet grasp. We did it. We turned the Dark Lord's spells against him. We turned black magic into green miracle. For just as Satan uses sorcery to defeat the people of God, so does God use his sacred battalions to defend the people of good. وَيُحِقُّ اللَّهُ الْحَقَّ بِكَلِمَاتِهِ وَلَوْ كَرِهَ الْمُجْرِمُونَ. And God makes the truth prevail by his words, even if the criminals detest it. The Hamlet verdict simultaneously became the most wicked and most imitated thing on social media. Just weeks later, genocide began. Wicked was celebrated by audiences and critics alike. But there is a deeper story still unfolding, one where poetic irony becomes a brutal iron hand. A world not only where no good deed goes unpunished, but where every evil one is richly rewarded. Where innocence is crushed and children are decimated by the very hands meant to protect them. Perhaps it's time to reflect on the world we've built, where truth, justice, mercy, and happy endings exist only in theaters, while treachery, tyranny, and cruelty haunt our reality. Elphaba's journey is marked by this very reversal. Despite her sincerity, her moral clarity, and her instinct to protect the vulnerable, she is met with suspicion and scorn. She is punished, not for wrongdoing, but refusing to be complicit. Her hero arc, then, teaches us a critical truth, that the sword of humility will always triumph over the armor of entitlement. If not in this world, then in the one that truly matters. Glinda, by contrast, is rewarded with fame and adoration, not because of goodness, but because she mirrors what the system demands: compliance, charm, and self-preservation, or simply following every trend when it is true, even if it wasn't true in them. The inversion of reward and punishment reveals a deeper problem. The standard of worth itself is corrupted. Elphaba is compelled to defy gravity by choosing integrity, even when it means isolation. In a world ruled by illusion, whether political, digital, or spiritual, such freedom is often punished. But in the unseen realm, it is liberation. To stand alone in truth is paradoxically to rise above everything that sought to ground you. And perhaps we must first learn to stand alone in truth before we are ever worthy of standing together. And maybe that is what shakes social media to its core. The wizard doesn't just fear Elphaba. He wants to appropriate her magic. He seeks to extract her power while erasing her personhood. This mirrors what often happens with truth when it cannot be possessed. It is discredited. When it cannot be co-opted, it is condemned. Elphaba is not just a character, but a symbol of the burden that failed leadership refuses to carry. She carries what others should, but won't. Not because she wants to, but because she has to. It is a piercing metaphor for our ummah, for every child who becomes the adult too soon, for every woman forced to shoulder the burden of weak men, for every believer carrying the spiritual grief of compromised scholars, for every hard-working employee whose bills just went up due to a small, ugly bill. And in the end, it is the persistent who are gaslit, blamed, doubted, and shamed by the very people who benefit from their strength while offering no support in return. They are cowards, cloaked in respectability. They decry injustice, but will never enter the fire. They benefit from Elphaba's courage, but leave her to burn alone. They call themselves men, but most are either lizards, chameleon hypocrites with no spine, or wizards, scheming impostors who would betray truth itself to preserve their illusion of power. What does it mean to defend the platform more fiercely than the truth? It means appropriating the message while erasing the messenger, denying the path while using its light to maintain influence. Because if people were allowed to truly see, to witness the difference between illusion and integrity, it would be unmistakable. And that would collapse the entire empire of deception. And that is why when the Quran was revealed, and it completely stymied Quraysh, they told their people, وَالْغَوْ فِيهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَغْلِبُونَ. Make noise over it so that you may prevail. They knew it was a miracle, so they didn't debate it. They tried to drown it out. The Hamlet verdict was not met with rebuttal, just noise, because the truth was too clear, too close, and in their reaction, they revealed what they are. You can preach khuluq all day and gather a crowd, but noise never makes the truth more proud. For those who walked in silence, firm and clear, are light years ahead while you're still here. Trapped in the fog asking, how can this be? Mistaking performance for sincerity. This is the trick of the social parade. The loud feel ahead, but the faithful have stayed. Unseen, unwavering, beyond the now, while you chase echoes and wonder how. When Elphaba sings, so if I'm flying solo, at least I'm flying free. To those who'd ground me, take a message back from me. We feel the clarity of one who has nothing left to lose but her chains. And isn't that the very essence of the spiritual path? Liberation begins not when we gain power, but when we release our need for it. Freedom is the realization of the soul's primordial oath. أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ قَالُوا بَلَى شَهِدْنَا. Am I not your Lord? They said, indeed, we bear witness. The world isn't inherently evil. How could it be when it is the creation of God? إِنَّ اللَّهَ خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ بِالْحَقِّ. Indeed, God created the heavens and the earth in truth. The world, in its essence, is good, spoken into being to manifest the divine names. But it is the gravity we append to the world in our hearts that betrays the only one who actually holds weight. If you cannot live through God, are you even living? Or are you just a wizard without a wand? On a personal note, I study Bujutsu. My staff is a broomstick with the bottom removed. If you get on my nerves enough, I will not hesitate to give you a good whooping. But let it be a sacred one, so that you come to understand that wizards don't own the world and they have no magic. They are lying losers who needed to learn that the precise strike of a metaphysic master lands harder than their entire charade. The Hamlet verdict was dedicated to a very special man. He wore simple clothes and carried a staff. At the time, he was the most feared man on earth, because he was the most fearful of God on earth. Sayyiduna Umar ibn al-Khattab, God be well pleased with him, journeyed from Medina to Jerusalem with only one servant and a single camel. They took turns riding. As they neared the city, it was the servant's turn to ride, while Umar, Sayyiduna Umar, walked, his feet in the mud, leading the camel, his clothes patched and dusty. When the Muslim generals offered him a more regal entrance, he refused. And so he entered Jerusalem, victorious, barefoot, unarmed, cloaked in coarse wool, saying, "We are a people whom God has honored through Islam. If we seek honor through anything else, God will humiliate us." In sacred tradition, the scale of good and evil is not set by popularity or public image. It is measured by the inner state of the soul. Traveling light is the pinnacle of spiritual intelligence. Maybe all we really need is a broomstick to sweep away the worldwide web of egos, to anchor our hearts in truth, to teach our souls how to soar. And maybe if we had learned this lesson sooner, people wouldn't have to die. Maybe we would have actually been able to carry the weight of the world. وَتَزَوَّدُوا فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى وَاتَّقُونِ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. O you of penetrating intellect, lub, fear God, and travel light. Sometimes the powerful have too much to lose. That's on them, not on Elphaba. She didn't fail the world failed her. She's just a character. She doesn't exist, but meanings are real, and they never die, because they come from God. That's why the people of God rejoice in meaning and grieve at hollowness, because they are real, true men and women through whom meaning endures. So perhaps if we can become the change our Prophet wants to see in the world, then the living vessels of truth won't always have to become martyrs. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد نور الأنوار وسر الأسرار وترياق الأغيار ومفتاح باب اليسار سيدنا محمد المختار وآله الأطهار وأصحابه الأخيار عدد نعم الله وإفضاله. الحمد لله رب العالمين.